President Donald Trump's first New Year's tweet stunned the world by announcing that he intended to cut off aid to Pakistan. The United States had spent $33 billion on Pakistan since 9/11, he said, and had got nothing in return. We at the Indian Express got hold of the numbers to try and explain how much money Pakistan actually gets from the United States and what it's actually going to stop getting in the future. President Donald Trump's right. The United States has given $33 billion in aid to Pakistan since 9/11. But that aid has been made up of three very different elements. There's $14 billion, the biggest single element, in coalition support funds. Essentially, that's reimbursing Pakistan for the supply of US troops in Afghanistan, for the use of its ports, for the use of its roads, and so on. Another $11 billion has been various forms of economic support. Things like propping up foreign exchange reserves in Pakistan, paying for education, healthcare, and so on and so forth. The smallest of these three elements has been about $8.25 billion in military assistance. That's money given directly to modernize Pakistan's military, as well as for things like training officers and so on and so forth. This is the money that's in question today. Now, President Donald Trump has said that they'll be cutting off all aid to Pakistan in the future, or seemed to suggest that in his tweet anyway. But the only thing we know for sure today from the US government is that they're cutting off $255 million in what's called FMF, or Foreign Military Financing. This $255 million was part of a package the United States had agreed to give to Pakistan. They were going to give them various things like attack helicopters and support for modernizing equipment. It's about a little over half the $525 million that Pakistan was expecting to get last year. This military component, that's about $255 million for this year, will not be paid. That's the bit that we're entirely certain about. We don't know what's going to happen to the rest of the money. So how much is the cutoff of this $255 million actually going to hurt Pakistan Armed Forces? Well, Pakistan's budget, military budget for this year, was going to be about $9 billion. Of this $9 billion, the vast bulk was going to go into maintaining infrastructure, paying salaries, and so on and so forth. But a little under $2 billion was going to go to modernize the armed forces, to buy new equipment. Pakistan has a whole bunch of big ticket purchases coming up, like surveillance aircraft, upgrading its tanks, and so on and so forth. $255 million is a bit over 10% of what Pakistan would be spending on the modernization of its armed forces this year. So that's going to pinch, but we shouldn't be under the wrong impression that the cutoff of this aid is going to bankrupt Pakistan's armed forces or really degrade them in any very significant way. What should be really worrying Pakistan, though, is that the US president's obvious anger is going to have a lot of consequences for it in coming months and years. Consequences that are a lot bigger than the cutoff of this aid. In February, Pakistan's Reserve Bank, which is called the State Bank of Pakistan, is supposed to give a report to the Financial Action Task Force on what it's done to combat terrorism finance. Now, Pakistan, as everyone knows, hasn't really met up to its United Nations obligations on cutting off fundings to groups like the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, all of which have been going around Pakistan collecting money quite freely, even though they're banned organizations. The FATF is a conglomerate of the world's major economies, and it basically sets up the rules of the banking system. And if by February, Pakistan doesn't bring some pretty good evidence to the table that it's actually cracked down on these outfits, it could find itself under intense scrutiny in the international financial system. In practical terms, that means every financial transaction going in and out of Pakistan is going to be subjected to very careful inspection by major Western banks, which makes life miserable for businessmen and companies in Pakistan. That will obviously lead to all kinds of far bigger economic consequences than just $255 million. What we think is that President Trump's actions are just the beginning of a set of measures that will incrementally ratchet up the pain on Pakistan financially to get it to fall in line with what the US wants it to do against terrorist groups, particularly in Afghanistan, but also groups active against India.